We are on the mic today talking about a very, very important thing that many women do not do,
But we're gonna be quick and dirty with it.
and that is eat enough. And, we talk about reverse dieting a lot, and a lot of, people have heard the coin reverse dieting and the term of that. The problem is that most women, starting at the age of like 13, I think it is, try to lose weight or diet on average 2 times per year until they're in their 60s. And what I think happens is that most women actually, by the time they're in their 30s or 40s, never actually come out of the diet. They're just chronically dieting, they're chronically under eating. And so, whether it's intentional or unintentional, because I know a lot of women out there, maybe they even eat like 1,700, 1,800 calories, but they're getting 15,000 steps in a day and they're exercising 6 days a week, doing really intense workouts, and they have little kids and like they're go, go, go. You're probably still unintentionally under eating. And so, the problem here is that we know the term metabolic adaptation, right? Where people think of it, your metabolism slows down. My metabolism is broken. No, no, no. Here's the problem. When you actually slow down metabolic function because you don't give it as many calories to function at a high level, or it needs to function at a high level to process those calories, the food stays in your system longer. And so the food that should be getting into cells, nutrients that should be getting into cells, ATP production that should be happening is not happening as quickly. And when food sits in your bloodstream longer and blood sugars stay elevated longer, oxidative stress builds up. Detoxification slows down. The immune system gets irritated. The gut becomes dysfunctional and imbalanced. There are microbiome imbalances. There's bloating. There's constipation. There's motility issues. There's all of these things that start to happen because you don't want to put on a couple pounds, or you're terrified of gaining any more weight. You're terrified of going up a size. And we get it. But what you're actually doing is you're creating a much, much bigger problem long term. And so when you have the issue of gaining weight, even though you're eating 1,200 or 1,300 calories, I say all the time, give me all day long people that come in overeating. All day. So much easier to fix. The girl that comes to me that's done the HCG diet, that's done GLP-1s horribly in the past and without any guidance, that's eaten 1,100 calories a day, I have a case that is going to take a long time to fix. So I promise you, under eating is the worst thing you can do for your body and your health.
Yeah, and I think many people don't recognize like how much their body needs, right? In terms of we've grew up with the 1,200 calorie. Like that's just like the MO, I feel like, of almost like every diet, some of them even less than that. But you think about any diet out there, the 21-day fix, Weight Watchers, all the things, there's so little caloric intake and they're so, focused on keeping it that way that they don't focus on nutrients. And so then you're dealing with other things too in terms of downregulation of thyroid function. You don't have the nutrients coming in to support building thyroid hormones, not to mention it's compensated because you're under eating. And so this is, a thing where you might start to notice that it gets harder and harder over time because you have something called your basal metabolic rate. That's the amount of calories that you burn daily just at rest. But the more that you chronically diet and the more that you do this in a cycle of yo-yo, maybe you're dieting and then you regain and you're dieting and you regain, that basal metabolic rate goes down, down, down. And so it's harder and harder to diet. And so spending time adequately reversing yourself, bringing your metabolism kind of back online, your hormones back online, replenishing the body is really what I want to say. Cause like they never fully go offline, right? Like the damage word, I don't like that, but want to bring those things back online and replenish them. Then you might realize, wow, I am now able to cut my calories at a much higher level. So if I'm burning 2,400 calories, let's say you're following like your Aura Ring or total daily energy expenditure, tdeecalculator.net, go there. Women are always shocked to see what their basal metabolic rate is and what they should be eating for their goals, because it's a lot higher. And we struggled sometimes, and still I think we do, to get women eating like 1,800 calories. Like there's such a fear that I'm going to gain weight there. You will start gaining weight at 1,000 or 1,200 calories if you don't do this strategically. So we've talked a lot in the past about diet periodization, right? Diet variation in seasons, and so reverse dieting, I would say, if that's you, where you have such a fear of food because you really fear that you're going to gain weight back, you want to go low and slow, like anything. Increase your calories 50 to 100 per week. You can do this. We used to have women specifically do it through fat for the first couple of weeks because it's, like half a tablespoon of olive oil is a lot easier than maybe saying like 3 cups of greens or, oh my gosh, like fruit, like a bowl of fruit or something like that, like berries. So doing something like that and then making sure that you're also kind of tracking your trends over time. And by that, I mean like what's your weight doing? Weight fluctuations are going to happen. They're going to happen whether or not you're eating 1,200 calories or 1,800 calories. So you can look at the average weekly weight to see, like, I'm not actually gaining a bunch of fat here. And you'll see that you'll level out. But if you throw a bunch of carbs in right away, yeah, you're going to see an uptick on the scale because carbs, glycogen holds water. And that's not going to make you feel good. You might feel puffier. So I like fat, or I think even protein could be good. An extra ounce of protein at your meals is another easy way, but take a slow walk up. At the same time, move more. When we have more energy, we're more likely to want to walk more. We're more likely to blink, just fidget, like move,
Yeah.
around. Like you don't want to just like lay on the couch. You notice that your energy come back online and things like that. And I think that when you're from a place like Becca was saying that has really chronically undereaten, you probably want to give yourself a year,
Yeah.
maybe more, to really get the full benefits of it. And you're going to have to do a lot of mindset work as well.
Yeah. You need to go really slow. If you've come into starting reverse dieting from a really deprived place, you don't want to increase quickly because you will gain fat. Like you absolutely will. And so that's why we go through a process of feeding people up very uniquely. When they come into us, we we put stimulatory supports in there. So we stimulate the thyroid a little bit in most cases. We stimulate the adrenals. We kind of make sure the gut stays moving and it keeps it balanced. We keep, push bad bacteria out. We get digestive enzymes in there to help with some of the additional food that might be coming in. We try to keep fiber pretty high to help with blood sugar, responses to those foods. So there's a lot of tricks and little tips that you can do to help as you increase calories, but you don't want to do it quickly, especially if you're doing it on your own, because absolutely your body will not be adjusted quick enough and you will gain body fat ultimately. And so like Liz was saying, you can definitely move more. Focus on getting stronger in the gym, using those extra calories for a benefit. Focus on your recovery, getting good sleep, keep hydration in a good spot, and play around with food. This is where I think macros can be really great. And you can do, more creative meals and you can have some fun with it, and kind of manipulate. And as you do this, sometimes what I'll do, especially if people are getting really full, I'll do a quick break, right? Like increase calories for 3 to 4 weeks and then take a break and eat a little bit less, right? Sometimes it can start to be to where you do feel full. You do feel kind of like this is a lot of food. I'm not used to this, especially if you're doing it with healthy foods. And so there's no problem in it's like a deload, right? It's like a deload in exercise. You take 4 to 6 weeks really hard and then you take a deload for a week or two.
A
Give your
deload
body
means
a
just
break.
like you're resting.
You
You're
pull back.
yeah.
Yeah, you
You're
pull back on the intensity of what you're doing. And
so
so
you bring up a good point there because the feeling of fullness is something that women actually lose.
terrifying for people.
Well, they lose when they lose their hunger cues. When they're chronically dieting, like you've quieted those cues. It's kind of like if you're withholding all the time, like no wonder you're constipated. Like you're not even getting the signal to go to the bathroom because you're basically shutting that down. And that's one of the negative consequences of chronically dieting is that your hormones are all out of whack. Not just your hunger hormones, so like leptin and ghrelin, but also your sex hormones, right? Your thyroid hormones. Those are things that, are really, really important. And hormones definitely require carbohydrates and fats, but mostly fats when we're thinking about like adrenal hormones and things like that. Carbohydrates for your thyroid. So you want to be smart, like Becca was saying, with maybe fibrous carbs and again, going up low and slow. But the other thing that we will also see besides the down regulation in your hormones and down regulation in, the basal metabolic rate and how many calories you're burning is digestion slows down. And we also see autoimmune and other metabolic dysfunction and especially liver stress on the liver because, and I want to bring up another point here, but your liver is required, or your liver is responsible for burning 20 to 30% of your basal metabolic rate. So that's also an important player here. And if all of these systems are off, right, we think of your thyroid as your gas pedal, right? It's your metabolic regulator. If that's down regulated, you're just shooting yourself in the foot here either way. So when there's resistance to reverse dieting, you have to ask yourself, like, where am I going to end up? Because you'll just start gaining weight. And we've seen this rapidly,
Mhm.
even for some people gaining weight. But
I think that's also because hormones start to come back online for a lot of women. So if people have been chronically dieting, a lot of times what'll happen is you'll end up with low hormones or low progesterone, low testosterone. You might be a little estrogen dominant, just relatively speaking, because of it. Because typically when people chronically undereat, they burn through their sex hormones first, because essentially the body doesn't need them technically. They help you feel good and they're healthy for you, but this is why so many women that come to us that are chronically dieting have zero sex drive. They have zero motivation because you have zero testosterone. Why would your body keep around testosterone if it's not getting fed, right? And so when you start eating enough, hormones can start to come back online. And when hormones come back online, you can get hormonal symptoms, you can get hormonal weight gain. And what I typically see is when people like basically go too fast with reverse dieting, they blow up because estrogen starts to come back online. You aren't detoxing it well enough. It starts to store, you have higher fat tissues now, you're aromatizing more. Estrogen keeps accumulating, it keeps retaining water. And we'll see women gain 30 to 40 pounds in like 3 to 4 months. Um,
I think that also happens too when you are trying to, like you mentioned earlier, move more in the
mhm.
move more for the purpose of offsetting the calories that you're increasing. So you have to be cautious here. This is like a fine line because we're not talking about increase your calories so that you can go and burn it off in the
Yeah.
gym doing an elliptical or an extra run or whatever. We're talking about like gentle movement that just kind of like makes you feel good.
Yep.
And I wouldn't do it like calorie for calorie because
No. And I think,
creates more
if
stress.
you're in this camp, if you're like, "Hey, I've probably been under eating for a long period of time." Like Liz was saying, I think where you start, you go figure out what's your metabolic potential, right? That's the TDEE calculator. What is like truly what your body should probably be able to burn in a day? Metabolic potential. That does not mean where your metabolic actual is. Your metabolic actual is what have you adapted it to? What are you probably burning right now? Look at what you've probably been eating for a long period of time. And if you don't know, track it. Use a Lose It app, use a MyFitnessPal, use whatever macro tracking, calorie tracking app out there that you prefer, and then slowly start to increase. And I think keeping a good balance, honestly, for most women, you probably want to be more dominant in fats and proteins as you go through the reverse diet. I'm not saying don't increase carbs, but they should come slower and later on in the process, and keep them around your workout if you want to kind of keep some of that insulin sensitivity. That's typically when you're going to be utilizing them the most effectively. And 50 calories to 100 calories every other week, I would say, even, because the slower you go, the easier the body will be able to adapt to it and not have as abrupt and unwanted changes that may happen. And then I would probably honestly put in some, Metapure or
Mm.
some Hormone Plus Complete or something in there that's going to help detox properly and keep the hormones in balance as they potentially do come back online. I think that would be really smart. Keeping in, lots of fiber, the teas that we love. We love dandelion root, ginger tea, peppermint tea, all of those things that are very soothing. Keep up hydration. And like we said, focus on getting stronger, focus on using those calories and, putting them to good use, building muscle mass and muscle tissue, lift heavier. Because at the end of the day, yes, that fat burning pathway, that AMPK pathway is so important for longevity and health. But that mTOR growth pathway, which is the sugar burning, where muscles grown, where you get when you eat adequately, is just as important. And I think a lot of people miss that over time. And then they never get the body composition they want because all they're focused on is less, less, less.
Yeah, I would probably support the adrenals and thyroid as well, like a thyroid support complex or thyroid boost essentials or something along those lines, because again, you've depleted your body of all these things like minerals, electrolytes, all that's going to be really, really important. Now, as we close this out, we don't want to leave you with fear that you're going to gain a bunch of weight. But we gave you those tips because we know that 1/3 of women do see a little bit of weight gain. And that can be challenging, right? You've chronically dieted because you're trying to keep your weight in check. On the flip side of this, though, we have seen many times women lose weight actually because their body is finally like not so freaking stressed out and watery and they drop inflammation and then they see muscle tone and those types of things if they're strength training and lifting. Or I would say another outcome here is that they just start to feel better. They're not seeing any negative or positive body composition changes on let me say changes on the scale. Positive, they're just staying the same,
Mhm.
but maybe their clothes start to fit a little bit better. They have a little bit more energy. Their sex drive is a little bit better. They're moving their bowels better. So let's classify this into a third, and a third chance of how it's going to go. But we don't want to negate that there is that risk for some individuals to gaining weight. But majority of the time that they gain weight, it's because they're going too fast and they're not supporting the systems, and they need to slow it down. So again, it's always wise to work with a coach or a practitioner to walk you through that process and be able to help you navigate the highs and the lows mentally and emotionally too, because it is something that takes a lot of undoing those thoughts and unwiring like those behaviors. Again, your MO, if you've done this for a long time, I will even say it's my MO.
Mhm.
Becca knows that. She'll call me out on that probably any day of the week. Because you just get busy and you
Yeah.
skip a meal and you're like, oh, or like, I don't feel like eating right now. I'm not really hungry. Or, what I did eat was such high quality food that it wasn't that many calories, that I should have added avocado or olive oil or, something else there. So, we just wanted to bring this back because we haven't talked about it in a long time. And I think more and more we're seeing so many people take these GLP-1s, and you're going to do a lot of metabolic damage on those if you're not using them the right way. And this would be the podcast, because this would be the situation. I think the person comes off the GLP-1, their dopamine receptors come back online, because it also suppresses your like dopamine pathway when you're on that. That's why you don't want the chocolate or whatever maybe some of those food triggers were. It quiets the voice inside your head that's related to dopamine. But when you get off the GLP-1, that comes back. And then some people go ham and they go crazy and they're like, give it all to me, And so some of that's a chemical imbalance, but also it can be that your hunger cues come back online and you didn't do the lifestyle and discipline mindset work that you needed to. And now you're back to your old habits and ways, and you gain it all back. So be wise coming off those GLP-1s too. They're not a lifelong thing. Maybe you cycle them, low dose or something along those lines. We don't know your situation, but I think there's so many people out there using them and abusing them. And we're going to see uh, some consequences.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And we'll be here. We'll be here when that happens. Don't worry. So have a great rest of your day, guys, and we will be back later.